Hi, my name is Jim Strutz, and I teach Bible. And I have got a thought I've been thinking about, pondering the last few days, and that is waiting for God. We usually like the term waiting on God. It's the idea of a servant waiting for his master's bidding. But I find so much of the time it just seems to me like I'm waiting for God. And I realize it's really about my attitude. Either way, I'm waiting. And I'm waiting for God or waiting on God, whatever I'm doing. We know that God's never late. But at the same time, He's later than we like. He's later than we hope for, and later than I expected Him to be so much of the time. Seems like we're never able to go to, advance directly to go. The Monopoly game, and you'd want to go right to go. You get $200, and you could pick up one of those community chest cards, and it'd say, advance directly to go, collect your $200, and more often than not, it'd be a community chance card, and it would say advance or go directly to jail. Do not pass go and do not collect your $200. So frustrating. Life is that way so much of the time. We heard the call of God and we imagined that we were standing on the go line and getting ready to advance and do the work of the kingdom. And then something happens, something delays. It seems like God's plan always includes this endless array of training and development steps along our path. They seem like diversions. They seem like interruptions to our life. But really, it's just been God's plan all along. And that sometimes seems frustrating to us because we don't like waiting. I do know that you can't rush the process. I try to rush the process. You can't rush the process. We have to make the most of every opportunity as it comes along. And that's what James says, the Epistle of James. He says in chapter 1, verse 3, the testing of your faith produces patience, or endurance, depending on your translation. It produces patience. And okay, but Lord, give me patience, give it to me now. But that's not how it works, of course. The testing of our faith produces patience. But the very next line says, we must let patience have its perfect work. And that's where the rub is. That's what the frustrating part is. Allowing that patience to just sit there and wait. Working its work in us. God's timing. Strange thing, isn't it? He's never late. We just think He is. You could ask Abraham and Sarah about that. They thought He was late. I mean, they were given a promise, and after 10 years of waiting, they're getting old. And they're thinking, well, maybe we can help Him along. Maybe we can do something to kind of move the process. And so they do. They try. Only it doesn't work. They actually end up with more frustrations than ever before. Habakkuk chapter 2 verse 3 says something about this, and he says the vision, that could be the vision that Abraham and Sarah had of having a son, creating a new nation from him. Or it could be your vision, God's vision for you. Whatever it is, it says the vision is for an appointed time. And there's the frustration. It's not for right now. We want it for now. But the vision is for an appointed time. And though it tarries, that's what it says, though it tarries, wait for it. Wait for it. God's plan is always worth waiting for. We just don't want to wait for it. Zephaniah 10 has something to do with this as well. Zephaniah 10 verse 1 says, ask the Lord for rain in the time of the latter rain. When is the time for the latter rain? Ask the Lord for rain at the time of the latter rain. The Israelis had 2 rainy seasons. Israel has 2 rainy seasons, or at least it did back then. I'm not sure what the weather patterns are these days, and they have changed. But 2,000 years ago, 3,000 years ago, when this was written, they had a wet season, a rainy season in the fall, and that was their planting season. And for an Alaskan boy, that just sounds really strange, planting in the fall. But the summers were too hot. And so if you're going to plant for grain, barley and wheat in their case, you plant it in the fall with the early rains, they called them. The early rains in the fall. And so you plant when there was plenty of moisture in the ground, seeking in, softening the ground so you could plant and have a good harvest. And sure enough, the grain would start growing up immediately. Within weeks, you'd have the grass is getting taller and taller. And then the weather, of course, would turn colder and colder because that was the fall and they were entering winter. And as the winter enters, less sunshine, less heat, and the grain just stops growing. It just kind of slows down and just quits, or at least it looks like it's quitting. But actually, the grain is actually the plants are actually putting deeper roots. The roots are still growing deeper and deeper as they're looking for moisture in the soil that's actually going down and down and down. And so these plants are preparing themselves really for the dry season that's coming ahead. And about February, it should start raining sometime in February, getting ready for the harvest that would come in maybe April. And so they start praying for rain. Every farmer would do it. And Zechariah here isn't telling farmers to pray for rain, because they would always pray for rain. But they know when the rain should be there. And Zechariah is saying, he's using that model as a metaphor for a spiritual outpouring, a spiritual harvest, and a spiritual blessing. And so he's saying to us, pray for rain. Pray for rain at the time of the latter rain, the spring rains, as some translations say. And the spring rains were erratic, whereas the fall rains, the early rains, were very predictable and very wet. The spring rains were not so predictable and not that wet. And if you didn't get a good spring rain, it would affect the harvest all through the whole summer of first the barley, and then the wheat, and then figs and grapes, and finally olives. And you would have a dismal harvest all year long if you didn't get the spring rain and get it in abundance. And so everybody would be praying for rain in the spring. And that's what he's telling us. The harvest is coming. Pray for rain. And today, I'm telling you the harvest is coming. Now is the time to pray for rain. We're waiting for God. But while we're waiting, pray for rain, because the harvest is coming. The harvest is about to start. Pray for rain. Amen. Hey, if you're in Anchorage, we'd love to see you at our church. Watch this. It's on Thursday nights, actually. It's kind of an odd church. We meet on Thursday nights, 6:30 p.m. We start with a potluck every week, and it's at 300 East Diamond Boulevard. We meet in the Alaska Dance Promotions site there. Potluck at 6:30. If you're not hungry, you can show up at 7, and the meeting will get started shortly thereafter. We hope to see you there. God bless you. Have a great week.